municipal scheme that makes some sense. Fourth, we have to revisit the juvenile codes, jurisdictional provisions, and send kids to juvenile court for treatment, not to serve as cash cows for their communities. We got to fix the juvenile courts, which, as we know, are currently under their own review. So I'm not saying they're perfect, but they do operate with a view of children in mind. 5, we need to redefine kids constitutionally to raise the age of juvenile court jurisdiction to 18. There will be a bill introduced this year. As I understand, it's going to be introduced by Senator Wayne Wallingford, a Republican, who's part of the Juvenile Justice Task Force that's been looking at this issue. 6, police practices need, I'm not lobbying, by the way, I'm not a lobbyist. I'm just giving educational points. Police practices, number 6, need to be improved and regularly monitored, not just to ensure cultural awareness and reducing racial bias, but age-appropriate practices so that these officers stop traumatizing our children. And they need to be further trained on truly updated understandings of constitutional law relating to where people, when and where they can be stopped, arrested, and the use of force and deadly force. 7, remaining municipalities after consolidation need to cull their codes and redraft, get rid of these unconstitutional provisions, and get rid of these provisions that criminalize ordinary adolescent behaviors in communities of color. Number 8, it takes not just a muni but a village. So I'd urge this commission to call for all community stakeholders to be mindful of the needs of kids in this community and step up and step out and offer what they can, including my own employer, Washington University, which can be doing a lot more along these lines. Nine, municipalities, and I pick up Thomas's point here, if the judges and the folks at the municipal courts care so much, they can grant amnesty right now for all outstanding warrants, fines, and fees. Start anew, make amends, start fresh, and especially do it for the kids whose constitutional rights have clearly been violated in those courts. 10, going forward, greater transparency, accountability, and oversight by independent watchdogs. We have no watchdogs in this state. I've never seen anything like it. I don't know how it got like this. And we have to do this to encourage respect and confidence in the systems of justice. An immediate step could be, many have called for an independent prosecutor to review the current situation as to Darren Wilson and perhaps create a special prosecutor in all circumstances going forward to make sure that there is independent accountability. I was supposed to be on public radio today. I could not because of client matters and dealing with some legislative things, and that's what I was going to talk about, but many believe that that is the appropriate next step currently, and it is still possible legally, but I know that's another night's conversation perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Quinn. Thank you for your eloquence. Thank you for your suggestions and your thoughtfulness in both representing those before the courts as well as being thoughtful with us and engaging in the legislative process. You don't have to be a lobbyist to talk to us about it. We would like to now hear from David Leipholtz, who has done a lot of work with the data. There have been a number of questions in the groups about the revenues that these municipalities are getting from these sources, and so we wanted this data to get before the commission briefly and for you to see it, and then we're going to have the entire panel back, Thomas and May and David, for questions, and I know the commission has a number of them. I have a number that I picked up from the groups, and so we will have questions there. So David, please proceed.
All right, thank you for allowing me to speak here tonight. I want to first just start off by saying, Thomas, the SLU Law Clinics, a lot of people practicing in this field were the people that we talked to when we first started this study. And I can tell you that when you hear these stories at first, it's very difficult to imagine it being the case across an entire system. But what our study found was that it is in fact the case. So our key findings, and these are just large, broad swaths of our findings, and there's many ripples that we'll kind of dive into while being respectful of the time. We found a lack of oversight of municipal courts. We touched on reliance on revenue, fines, and fees. Procedural issues have been discussed, and then the loss of trust, I think, is evident. When I say a lack of oversight, we really tried to see how this happened. What is different about St. Louis as a region that our municipal court system operates in a way that, from our initial interviews, seemingly had lost the trust of the people. What we found was that in Missouri there are 45 judicial circuits. And this is a little dry, but I assure you there's a point to it. The municipal courts in Missouri are a division of the state circuit in which they sit. So if you're in the 21st Circuit and you're a municipal court, that presiding judge in that circuit oversees those municipal courts. The problem with this system is that in many ways it's built to reflect a really fragmented region like we have. On average, the Missouri Judicial Circuit has 8.6 municipal courts. In St. Louis County, there's 81. So, and just to give you a feel for that, it's not as if there's a lot of metropolitan areas with a lot of municipal courts and then very few in outstate or anything like that. The next closest in the size has 20 municipal courts, so we have 61 more courts. Where that becomes an issue is you have the same one presiding judge that is responsible for overseeing nearly 10 times the municipal courts. And what you have there is a system that lacks oversight and is ripe for many different interpretations of how a municipal court should act and what they're allowed to do. To give you an overall figure for the end product of that lack of oversight, as you can see, the St. Louis region is responsible for bringing in 46% of all municipal fines and fees that are taken in the state of Missouri, while only having 22% of the population. If you look at St. Louis County and St. Louis City, they both relatively mirror their percentage of state population. But when you look in the municipal courts within St. Louis County, you see that it's 11% of the population and over a third of the fines and fees, $45 million every year, come in through those courts. That led us to really dig a little bit deeper. And what we found was that this is a pretty targeted problem as well. To understand those figures, you have to understand that there are also municipalities that maybe get 1 or 2% of their revenue from court fines and fees. So you can imagine what that means on the other end. It means courts that are bringing in 50, 60% of the operating budget for their municipality through fines and fees. And essentially what develops is an economically incentivized system for officers and their community to have negative interactions that drastically and disproportionately impact the people that live there. St. Louis County has 14 municipalities where fines and fees are the single largest source of operating revenue. Larger than sales tax revenue, larger than property tax revenue. 13 of the 14 of those municipalities are north of Olive and within the 270 corridor. St. Louis County also has 21 municipalities that collect over 20% of their general revenue from fines and fees. 20 of those 21 lie in that same area, north of Olive and within 270. When we brought this to people's attention, their comment was there should be a law against this. Well, there is. The only issue is that while there are 7 municipalities we found are over the 30% cap, nothing has been done, even though that revenue is supposed to be going to the school system. We called the state and we asked how come nothing was really being done to monitor this, and we were told that they rely on municipalities to self-report and send the excess funds. Now, the law itself says that failure to report results in a loss of court jurisdiction. We haven't found any indication that that's been done either. And when we did some basic arithmetic, we also found that if every municipality, the city and the county, all lived up to this 30% cap, we could actually more than double the money we currently take in at $45 million. So because the municipalities that are living below that, we're actually a lot lower than we could be. So as you've heard both in